Hello and welcome to On the Move, a show about what's going on in Hampton Roads featuring community leaders who are moving the region forward. I'm Thomas Becker with Hampton Roads Transit, and today we're wrapping up our three-part series on emergency preparedness and the hurricane season.
All right, well, we're continuing our hurricane prep coverage here at On the Move, and we're delighted to welcome Jamie Rhome, Deputy Director of the National Hurricane Center in Miami. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Well, thank you for having us.
As you know, we are in Hampton Roads, very susceptible region for hurricanes. From a national perspective, what are some of the best practices you want people to know, here in Hampton Roads to be ready for hurricane season?
Yeah, a lot of people, when they think about hurricane preparedness, they really think about, kind of basic things like, non-perishable food and water. And that's definitely a step, I want people to take. But more and more, we're becoming a society that's increasingly dependent upon electricity and communication. And let me explain that, because we've been, using electricity for a while now. The Hurricane Center studies trends in mortality after hurricanes is to try to figure out how to, bring down mortality. And one of the things that we're seeing is increasingly people are succumbing to the tremendous impacts after the storm, not just during the storm. And by that, I mean loss of power, especially for medically sensitive individuals or people who, need power for medical devices, or you can imagine a myriad of things that require, power to keep it going. And then the heat. Often it's incredibly hot and humid after a hurricane, which for some people, can be deadly. We're seeing an uptick in heat-related deaths after a hurricane. So I really want people to think about that. Are they physically able to endure several days, if not a week, of power loss? And if not, go ahead and make a plan to, deal with that. And then the other one is, and I'm guilty of this too. I mean, so much of our lives, we can either do a search online for information or use an AI, bot to ask how to do something or go somewhere, or our phone numbers are stored on there. So if you lose internet, which often is the case during a hurricane, what information normally you have at your fingertips are you missing? Like you wouldn't be able to get access to it, and maybe take a moment to just write that stuff down.
Yeah, great points. And then we're talking about battery-powered radios, even down to the basics, right?
Yeah. I mean, just to give you a sense, this is not just a talking point. I have two generators that enables me to make power if we lose power. And the reason I have two, well, one, there's if one were to fail or break, but I have them on different fuel sources too. So if a given fuel source is not available or got disrupted, so I have one that runs on traditional gasoline and one that runs on natural gas. And I have natural gas at my house. So this gives me a little bit of diversity and flexibility, and gives me some resiliency if, for example, natural gas get disrupted. I can obviously, or if there's a shortage of fuel, which is often the case, very much a case, it can be hard to get fuel. And then I have a lot of battery operated devices, in the home, whether that be just as a backup, or in some cases you just don't want to run the generator. Maybe you want to break from running the generator because it can be a little bit noisy.
Yeah, good advice. It's been about a good 9 years or so since we've had a significant hit here in Hampton Roads. So complacency certainly is an issue, particularly in a transient area such as ours with a lot of military activity, people moving in and out. What's the best way to battle this complacency in a region like ours, or in general?
Yeah, and we're doing it today, constantly having a conversation, refreshing and renewing one's efforts to make sure people are aware of hurricane season, number one, what they can do about it, and then challenging ourselves to give information to these new residents that's actionable. So, we need to avoid things like be ready. I mean, what does be ready mean? You know what I mean? Like, let's give people actionable, tangible advice that they can then take. and I'm, we've got some newer staff at the Hurricane Center that are new Florida residents, and many of them have never, gone through a major hurricane. I'm teaching them how to survive, a hurricane, and make sure that they're in good shape here. And sometimes it's just the simple stuff, like, in Florida, there tends to be a run on fuel, and fuel will be incredibly difficult to get, starting about 3 days before landfall or impacts. So teaching them to if they're going to get fuel or top off their tanks, to do that at day 4 and day 5 relative to landfall, not to wait to the last minute. It is incredibly hard here in Florida to get supplies, even 2 and 3 days before landfall. The grocery stores get emptied out. Those bolts you're missing for your windows, to put up boards on your windows. It's hard to find them. They run out. It just gets hard to do things. Getting your prescriptions filled, on an average day can be difficult. You can take days, to get it renewed and filled. So keeping your prescriptions up to date, and don't be in a situation where you're trying to rush to get a prescription filled right before a storm.
Yeah, it's good advice. We've covered this from a local angle, as well as from our own agency's perspective, as far as what our customers can expect or how they can prepare. And now we're hearing it on a national level. And I think the common theme here is plan ahead.
Yeah, and just really just sit down and think through things. A lot of residents, have electric vehicles. That's not good or bad, but it's different, right? Their plan for surviving a hurricane has to be a little different. They have to sort of think through that from a range perspective. How much range does a vehicle have? You might not be able to recharge right away, or you might need to invest in some ability to recharge if let's say your work is forcing you to go to and from or move around after a storm. Then you want to take that in consideration. Now, one of the benefits of electric vehicles, in some electric vehicles do allow you to extract that power back for residential use, as a power source if you do lose power. Not all vehicles are going to be the same, but some vehicles I've seen, some electric vehicles are letting people sort of send that power back to the home in these big long power outages.
So as weather pros, one last question: how is the Hurricane Center getting ready for the season?
I'm really, so we run through a list of drills, both personally and professionally. So professionally, the team is constantly running what you commonly hear of as exercises or drills or stress tests or these types of things to make sure things are working and functioning. Ideally, we're running through backup tests, meaning if any of our communications were disrupted here, we have backup capabilities in government. It's called continuity of operations. We're running through and just making sure everything is functioning the way we want to, training people, making sure people are up to date, sort of 6 months of off season, you can get a little rusty, that sort of thing. And on a personal level, we go through and help our staff, make sure that their hurricane plans are sort of up to date and ready, paying particular interest to our newer staff, new residents, and then making sure those two plans dovetail together nicely. Your personal and professional lives, come together quite a bit during a disaster, because other people might be able to stay home, but our staff would have to come into the work during a hurricane. So making sure that those two plans blend together nicely.
And what's the best website folks can get to learn more?
So from the weather perspective, hurricanes.gov, that is the official website of the National Hurricane Center. And there is only one National Hurricane Center. There's only one entity in the federal government that predicts and warns on hurricanes. So that's where you would go to get that information. And there's a lot of bad information out there. So I really hope people will go to reliable, credible sources. At hurricanes.gov is that reliable, credible source. And then in terms of preparedness and looking, making sure you seeing if you're in an evacuation zone, you can go to ready.gov, which will provide a myriad of information over preparing a disaster kit and ensuring that you're ready from a preparedness standpoint.
Right. Well, wonderful advice as we wrap up this series on hurricane prep. Again, whether you're a customer grabbing our bus or looking at your own local flood zone, I think we've provided quite a bit of content here, and hopefully our viewers can look at their own situation and prepare for the season ahead. Jamie, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. We're honored to chat with you, and good luck as the season progresses.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us for On the Move.
Thanks for watching On the Move. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. We'll see you next time.